Today marks 1 week since I died. My death was a meticulously staged, multi-car pileup that sent my vehicle plunging into the river, where it was consumed by flames. No body was ever recovered. The funeral was a grand, dignified affair. The city's business elite turned out in droves, and the wreaths piled up like mountains of snow. My massive black and white portrait hung in the center of the hall. In it, I'm in a tailored suit, the corner of my mouth turned up in a faint, knowing smirk, as if mocking the whole world. I was hiding in a corner of the crowd, wearing a baseball cap and a mask, a true ghost at my own memorial, watching the grand performance unfold with cold detachment. The guests wore expressions of perfectly measured grief. My business partners lamented the loss of a great talent while mentally carving up the empire I'd left behind. And then there was my ex-wife, Eleanor Hayes, standing at the very front in a black floor-length dress. She wasn't crying. Her face, a study in cool, exquisite beauty, was as expressionless as ever. She looked like a statue carved from fine white marble, delicate, fragile, but utterly devoid of human warmth. She just stood there, perfectly still, as if the man being mourned wasn't her husband of 3 years, but a complete stranger. Looking at her, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. Eleanor, the heiress to the Hayes family fortune, had married me to secure her family's business interests. For 3 years, we were strangers sharing a roof, our relationship a polite and icy distance. She was my wife in name only, more like a roommate I occasionally slept with. Her composure was exactly what I wanted. I needed a clean death to escape the enemies clinging to me like shadows and start a new life. I didn't need anyone's tears or attachments, especially not hers. After the funeral, my plan was to disappear, to vanish without a trace. But some strange impulse made me stay. I wanted one last look, a look at the empty cage my death had bought me. Late that night, like a thief, I slipped back into the house we once shared, a sprawling villa nestled in the Highlands. Everything was just as I'd left it, unervingly quiet. I circled around to the back, easily scaling the trellis to the second-floor balcony of my study. The curtains were drawn, but a sliver of an opening revealed a dim, flickering light within. I pressed my face to the cool glass and peered inside. And then I saw something that would be burned into my memory forever. The study was dark, save for a circle of white candles burning on the floor. In the center of the circle sat my funeral portrait. Before it, a brass basin glowed, filled with the embers of burning mementos. A makeshift, eerie shrine. Kneeling before it was Eleanor. She had changed out of her black dress and was wearing only a loose, white silk robe. Her long hair was down, her feet were bare. The aloof, untouchable aura she usually carried was gone, replaced by a breathtaking vulnerability. Piece by piece, she fed slips of paper into the basin, her lips moving silently. I held my breath, assuming she was praying for me. But her next action made the blood freeze in my veins. She stood and dragged a large cardboard box from the corner. When she opened it, I saw that it was filled to the brim with black stockings. Every brand, every style imaginable. Lace, fishnet, garter stockings. All of them high-end luxury items. Each pair worth a small fortune. I was stunned. I remembered telling her, more than once, how much I loved seeing her in them. And every time, she would just give me a cold, withering look as if I were some kind of pervert and walk away. But now, she pulled out a brand new pair, adorned with delicate Chantilly lace, and stared at them with a haunting intensity. Then she did something that made my skin crawl. Without a moment's hesitation, she tossed the expensive stockings into the burning basin. Ethan. Her voice was raw, raspy like sandpaper, and laced with a sick, obsessive desperation. You always liked to see me in these, didn't you? The flames shot up, instantly consuming the fragile fabric and releasing a sharp, acrid smell. I'm burning them for you. She took out another pair and threw it in. Come back. The firelight danced across her face, illuminating an expression that was almost demonic. It wasn't sadness or anger, but a bottomless, unyielding madness. Her eyes were tearless, just a scorched, crimson-red desert. She knelt there, mechanically repeating the same motion. Opening a new box, stroking the silk for a moment with a lover's touch, and then resolutely casting it into the fire. Box after box. The very things I had once begged her to wear, the desires she had scorned as my vulgar fantasies, were now being offered up as a sacrifice before my eyes, turning to ash. My mind went blank. An invisible hand clenched around my heart, squeezing until I could hardly breathe. What the hell was this? A belated show of affection, or some twisted form of revenge for my death? I couldn't make sense of it. The Eleanor I knew was always composed, controlled, a walking iceberg. Our marriage had been a calculated business transaction. We had a prenuptial agreement, separate finances, no questions about our private lives. Outside of the necessary public appearances as a loving couple, we barely exchanged 10 sentences a day. I had assumed she felt the same way I did. Nothing. That my death would, after a brief moment of shock, be a relief to her. But who was this woman before me? This woman who set up a shrine for me in the dead of night and frantically burned a fortune in black stockings? The flames in the basin grew higher, the heat in the room becoming unbearable. The smell of burnt silk mingled with expensive perfume, creating a decadent, desperate miasma. I clung to the window frame, a voyeur nailed to the spot, unable to move forward or back. I saw beads of sweat form on her forehead, her face flushed an unnatural red from the heat and emotional turmoil. Her lips were chapped, but she kept whispering. "You bastard. Ethan, you goddamn bastard. You love my legs so much, didn't you? I told you. No one else would ever see them. Now I'm burning them for you. Why don't you come back and look?" Her voice grew fainter, cracking with sobs that never came. The sheer, repressed agony was more heart-wrenching than any wail. I suddenly remembered something. Our first wedding anniversary. I had cleared my schedule, bought a huge bouquet of roses, and booked a table at her favorite restaurant. I thought even a business arrangement deserved a little ceremony. That night, half joking, I'd said to her, "Eleanor, you look beautiful tonight. You'd be perfect if you wore those stockings I gave you." They were a limited edition pair I'd had flown in from Paris. What had she said? She hadn't even glanced at the exquisite gift box. She just said flatly, "Ethan, I'm not one of your disposable playthings. Put that away. It's cheap." Her words had extinguished every spark of warmth and hope I'd felt. After that, I never asked again. I thought she despised me, found me vulgar, but now, among the stockings she was burning, was that very same limited edition pair I'd given her, the one she tossed aside like trash. Why? My mind was a chaotic mess. Question after question coiled around me like strangling vines. Finally, the last box was empty. The fire in the basin began to die down, leaving behind a pile of black, twisted ash. Eleanor knelt before it, looking as if all her strength had been drained away. Her head was bowed, her long hair obscuring her face. The world fell silent. I thought the bizarre ritual was finally over. But in the next second, she did something that sent a chill down my spine. She laughed. It wasn't a laugh of relief or release. It was a low, guttural sound that seemed to crawl up from the depths of her throat, filled with an endless, desolate despair. He. In the dead of night, the sound was piercing, terrifying. As she laughed, her body began to tremble uncontrollably. Then, she fell backward, stiff as a board. Thump! The back of her head hit the cold hardwood floor with a sickening crack. But she didn't seem to feel it. She just lay there, her empty eyes staring at the ceiling, still laughing like a madwoman. She'd lost her mind. She'd actually gone insane. I couldn't take it anymore. I slammed my fist against the cold glass. My perfect fake death, the new life of freedom I craved. In that instant, it was all shattered by this woman's madness. I couldn't escape. Not until she was either truly insane or until I found out the truth behind all of this. I wasn't going anywhere. The moment Eleanor collapsed, my first instinct was to smash the window and rush in. But reason held me back at the last second. I was a dead man. If I appeared now, my entire plan would be ruined. The jackals lurking in the shadows would immediately smell blood and pounce. And then it wouldn't just be me in danger. Eleanor would be dragged into it, too. I clenched my fists, digging my nails into my palms, using the pain to stay lucid. I couldn't go in. I watched, helpless, as Eleanor lay on the floor for a full 10 minutes. Her laughter slowly died down, replaced by soft, choked whimpers. She hadn't passed out. She was just exhausted. Finally, she struggled to her feet. She didn't touch the back of her head, didn't even glance at the pile of black ash. Like a sleepwalker, she drifted unsteadily out of the study. I saw her go into the bedroom, and then the light went out. Everything returned to a dead silence, as if the frenzied sacrifice had been nothing more than a grotesque dream. But I stood on that balcony all night. The wind was cold, chilling me to the bone, but it couldn't cool the feverish chaos in my mind. Eleanor's reaction was completely beyond my comprehension. I thought our marriage was a transaction. Now that I was dead, the deal was off. She should have been relieved. So why was she mourning me in such an extreme way? Those stockings. Could it be that she actually had feelings for me? The thought surfaced, only to be immediately dismissed. Impossible. If she loved me, why we spent 3 years living like strangers? The way she looked at me was always distant and wary, as if I were a dangerous object she had to keep at arm's length. Our bodies had known intimacy, but our hearts were separated by an ocean. I even had the sense that she was afraid of me. Was it all an act? But why would she pretend? At dawn, I slipped away from the villa and returned to the safe house I'd rented in the suburbs. This was the first outpost for my new life. Inside, a new passport, stacks of foreign currency, and a one-way ticket to South America were waiting for me. According to the original plan, I should have been on a plane today, leaving Ethan Vance behind for good. But now, I stared at the ticket, unable to make a move. Eleanor's pale, tormented face was burned into my mind. No, I couldn't just leave. I had to figure out what the hell was going on. Did she love me, hate me, or was there some secret I knew nothing about? I opened a laptop hidden in a secret compartment. It was connected to the private intelligence network I had built myself, a web of surveillance that covered the entire city. I was once a king in this city's underworld. There was nothing I couldn't find out if I wanted to. Even though I was dead, my network was still active. I typed in a string of complex code and hacked into the security system of the Highlands residential area. I needed to see how she was living her life without me. The security footage loaded quickly. Eleanor woke up at 7 a.m. sharp, changed into a crisp business suit, and applied her makeup with practiced precision. She was once again the untouchable CEO of the Hayes Corporation. She ate breakfast with a blank expression, then was driven to the office. At work, she was a force of nature, decisive and ruthless. Meetings, contracts, putting out fires. She handled it all without a hint of hesitation. Everything was exactly as it had been before my death. It was as if the broken, crazed woman from last night simply didn't exist. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would never have believed they were the same person. She was a master of disguise. Or maybe she had just become accustomed to wearing that icy mask. But why? Like the worst kind of stalker, I watched every second of her day on the screen, searching her placid face for any crack in the facade. But after a full day, I found nothing. Until she came home that evening. She didn't turn on the lights. She just sat alone in the vast, dark living room, motionless as a statue. Just as I thought she might sit there until morning, she stood up and walked into my closet. It was my personal walk-in closet, filled with my suits, shoes, and ties. I watched her reach out a slender hand and run her fingers over the sleeve of the suit I used to wear, her touch light, slow, almost reverent. Then, she took down a black dress shirt I often wore and clutched it tightly in her arms. She buried her face in the fabric, like a lost child, greedily inhaling the last traces of my scent that lingered there. My heart felt like it had been stabbed. So, she wasn't indifferent. She was just hiding all her grief and pain where no one could see it. From that day on, I became a true ghost. By day, I hid in my safe house, a shadow watching Eleanor's life from afar. At night, I would sneak back to the villa, a twisted guardian angel, watching the lights in her room turn on, then off. My escape plan was postponed indefinitely. The ticket to South America was tossed into a drawer where it began to collect dust. I told myself I was only staying to uncover the truth, but I knew I was lying to myself. I couldn't leave her. Not the woman who fell asleep at night clutching my shirt. Not the woman who armored herself in ice by day to single-handedly run a massive corporation. I was discovering that after 3 years of marriage, I knew nothing about my wife. I started digging into her life with a feverish intensity. Her past, her friends, her habits, even every private expenditure. The more I found, the more unsettled I became. Eleanor's life was as clean as a blank sheet of paper. Outside of work, she had no social life. No best friends, no confidants, not even a casual male acquaintance. Her world seemed to consist only of the office and that cold, empty house. It wasn't normal. How could an heiress like her not have a single close friend to talk to? Following a hunch, I dug up her old university records. The girl from that time was a completely different person. In the photos, she had bangs and 2 small dimples when she smiled, bright as the morning sun. She was always surrounded by friends. One girl in particular was always by her side, inseparable. Her name was Chloe Davis. But in their final year of university, Chloe died in an accident. And from that day on, Eleanor's personality changed completely. She cut her long hair, erased her smiles, and became quiet and withdrawn, keeping everyone at a distance. Looking at Chloe's picture, I felt a nagging sense of familiarity. Suddenly, a detail I had long overlooked clicked into place. Eleanor had a quirk. She never wore anything with lace. Not lingerie, not dresses. I had always assumed it was just her minimalist style. But I remembered clearly, In her university photos, she was wearing a beautiful lace dress. And Chloe, I zoomed in on a photo of them together. On Chloe's wrist was a delicate lace bracelet. A wild idea sparked in my mind. I immediately used all my resources to investigate the truth behind that accident years ago. The official police report was simple. Chloe Davis was speeding on a rainy night, lost control, and drove off a cliff. Car destroyed, driver killed on impact. But as I dug deeper, I uncovered a hidden story. The car belonged to Eleanor. The person who was supposed to be in that car that night wasn't Chloe. It was Eleanor. It was Chloe who got behind the wheel in her place. Why? As I wrestled with that question, I uncovered another shocking fact. The rich kid who had been aggressively pursuing Eleanor at the time, the one who had challenged her to that race, his family had been financially ruined years later by a man known only as K. The name was like a poisoned dart straight to my heart. He was the entire reason I'd fake my death. My oldest and most dangerous enemy. Why? Why was K connected to all of this? Was it possible that the accident all those years ago was no accident at all? The mention of K's name filled the air with a thick stench of conspiracy and danger. I immediately dropped my investigation into Eleanor's past and focused all my energy on the connection between K and the Hayes family. K was a rival I'd made back in my underworld days. He was vicious and cruel, and we had a bloody history. After I went straight and started my own company, he clung to me like a rabid dog. That was the real reason I had to die. Only by vanishing completely could I get him off my trail and protect the people around me. I'd always thought his vendetta was with me alone. But now, it seemed things were far more complicated. Eleanor's father, Robert Hayes, was known as a gentleman in the business world, humble and low-key. The Hayes Corporation specialized in luxury real estate, a world away from my former criminal enterprises. What possible connection could they have? I used my access to breach the Hayes Corporation's internal financial systems. After poring over a decade of financial records, I finally found it, a single thread. About 5 years ago, the year before Eleanor and I were married, a massive sum of money flowed into the Hayes Corporation from an overseas account. On the books, it was flawlessly disguised as profit from a foreign investment. But I knew it wasn't normal, because behind that foreign investment company, I saw a familiar name, K. My heart sank like a stone. The Hayes family had been entangled with K all along. Robert Hayes was far from the clean-cut businessman he appeared to be. That money wasn't an investment. It was a payoff. Protection money. So, what had happened between them that would force a proud man like Robert Hayes to bow to a street thug like K? Could it be related to Chloe Davis's death? I followed the money trail, digging deeper. Finally, in an encrypted, deleted email archive, I found the answer. It was an email from Robert Hayes to his most trusted confidant. The contents made my blood run cold. Years ago, the rich kid pursuing Eleanor was actually K's only son. That street race wasn't some youthful dare. It was a trap set by K's son and his friends. Their plan was to stage an accident and assault Eleanor. Chloe had overheard their plot. To protect Eleanor, she had secretly put on Eleanor's coat, got in her car, and drove to that fatal rendezvous. She had hoped that her accident would trigger a police investigation and expose their conspiracy. But she had underestimated K's power. In the aftermath, K used his influence to bury all the evidence, framing it as a simple traffic accident. And Robert Hayes, to protect his family and shield Eleanor from further harm, chose silence. He didn't dare go to the police, didn't dare speak out. He just swallowed the bitter truth. That massive payment was K's hush money, and a way to keep the Hayes family under his thumb. I finally understood. I finally understood why Eleanor had changed so drastically. She hadn't changed. She had turned herself into a living tombstone for Chloe Davis. She punished herself with coldness and distance, believing she was responsible for her best friend's death. She refused to wear lace because Chloe had loved it. The sight of it was a constant reminder of the girl who died for her, and the reason she agreed to marry me. My heart clenched. I couldn't bear to think about it. I stumbled into the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face again and again, but I couldn't extinguish the fire raging inside me. It was a fire of fury, of regret, and an overwhelming, crushing ache for Eleanor. All this time, what I'd seen as coldness and detachment was just a thin shell of ice she used for protection. Underneath, her heart was already shattered, bleeding. As I was reeling from the shock and self-blame, something even more unexpected happened. The computer in my safe house blared with a piercing alarm. It was the highest level security alert I had. It meant my private network was under a brute force attack from an outside source. And whoever it was, they were good. So good they had already bypassed my first 3 firewalls. I shot back to the computer, my fingers flying across the keyboard, try to trace the intruder's IP address. But their anti-tracking skills were beyond anything I'd ever seen. They moved through my digital world like a ghost, leaving no trace. Just as I was about to pinpoint their general location, the attack suddenly stopped. A single line of text appeared on my screen. "I know you're not dead, Ethan." My pupils contracted. He knew who I was. Who was he? One of Kay's men. The feds? Before I could react, a second line appeared. "If you want to protect Eleanor, be at the abandoned West Side docks. Friday, 10 p.m. Come alone." And then every trace of the intrusion vanished, wiped clean. It was as if it had never happened. I sat frozen in my chair, my back soaked with cold sweat. It was a trap. A blatant trap set just for me. The intruder not only knew I was alive, but he also knew my greatest weakness, Eleanor. Should I go? My mind screamed that it was a suicide mission, that if I showed up, there would be no turning back. But those words, "if you want to protect Eleanor," echoed in my head like a curse. After what I had just learned, I knew the relationship between her family and Kay was a ticking time bomb. With me dead, her greatest protection was gone. Kay could make a move on the Hayes family at any moment. And Eleanor would be first in the line of fire. I couldn't go. I had to go. The next 2 days were torture. I doubled the clandestine security around Eleanor, assigning my most trusted men to watch her 24/7. At the same time, I desperately tried to identify the mysterious hacker. But it was useless. Their skills were flawless. They had appeared from nowhere and vanished just as completely. Friday night arrived all too soon. I decided to go. I changed into a black tracksuit, pulled on a cap and a mask, and melted into the darkness. I tucked a combat knife into the back of my waistband and strapped a micro-compact pistol to my ankle. I wasn't going there to die. I was going to slay a dragon. The abandoned docks were dead silent. The sea breeze carried the scent of salt and rust. As instructed, I walked alone to the end of the pier. A figure was already there, his back to me. He wore a long black trench coat, his tall frame radiating an aura of intense pressure, even from behind. "You came." He turned around. The moment I saw his face, I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. It was him. Standing before me wasn't Kay or any of my old enemies. It was someone I never would have dreamed of. Eleanor's psychologist, Dr. Liam Davis. The mild-mannered man with the gold-rimmed glasses who always had a gentle smile on his face. Surprised? Liam pushed his glasses up his nose. In the cold moonlight, his eyes, hidden behind the lenses, glinted with a sharp, wolf-like intelligence that was completely at odds with his scholarly appearance. "You," I managed, forcing the word past the shock lodged in my throat. "Me," he admitted, his tone matter-of-fact. "Who the hell are you? What do you want?" I tightened my grip on the knife hidden behind my back, every muscle in my body tensed. A psychologist who could hack my systems and knew Eleanor's importance was no ordinary doctor. "Relax, Ethan." Liam seemed to see right through me. He raised his hands, showing they were empty. "If I wanted you dead, you'd already be a corpse." His voice held an unnerving confidence. "I asked you here tonight to propose a deal." "What kind of deal?" "I know you want to take down Kay. So do I." A flash of profound hatred crossed Liam's face. "We can work together." "Why should I trust you?" I sneered. "Because of this." Liam pulled something from his pocket and tossed it to me. I caught it instinctively. In the moonlight, my eyes widened. It was a lace bracelet, identical to the one Chloe Davis wore in the photograph. You're. "I'm Chloe's brother," he said, each word heavy with repressed pain. If I hadn't been studying abroad back then, if I had been here with her, she wouldn't have died. I was completely floored. No wonder he knew so much. No wonder he had gotten close to Eleanor, becoming her psychologist. This was all part of a revenge plot that had been years in the making. "Does Eleanor know who you are?" I asked, my voice strained. "No." Liam shook his head. "And she can't. She's suffered enough. This dirty work is for me to handle." I looked at him, a man who was silently protecting the two most important women in his life in his own quiet way. "How do we do this?" "Simple." Liam's gaze sharpened again. "You work from the shadows, I'll work in the light. You give me the evidence of Kay's criminal activities, and I'll use it to ruin him on the business end. I want him to pay for my sister's death. I want him to lose everything. And after he's gone?" "After he's gone," Liam looked at me, his gaze deep and searching. "Eleanor is your responsibility. Take her away from here. Go as far as you can and never come back." His words struck a chord deep inside me. It was the best possible outcome. Once Kay was out of the picture, all the threats would be gone. I could come back to life and take Eleanor away from this city of lies and deceit. "Okay," I said, without a moment's hesitation. "You've got a deal. From that day on, Liam and I formed the most secret of alliances. We were two hunters working in perfect sync, one in the sunlight, the other in the shadows, slowly tightening the net we had woven for Kay. Liam used his position as Eleanor's psychologist to stay close to her. On one hand, he helped soothe her increasingly fragile emotional state. On the other, he carefully extracted more information about the early dealings between the Hayes Corporation and Kay. Meanwhile, I fully embraced my role as a ghost. I began to systematically gather evidence of all of Kay's crimes over the years: smuggling, money laundering, assault. Each one was enough to put him away for life. The process was far more difficult than I had imagined. Kay was meticulous and ruthless. He had destroyed most of the critical evidence. Just as I was hitting a dead end, an unexpected event gave me the opening I needed. Eleanor's company was in trouble. A major real estate project under development by the Hayes Corporation was suddenly hit with a scandal involving serious structural quality issues. The city shut it down and launched a full-scale investigation. Public opinion turned against them overnight, and the company's stock price plummeted. I knew instantly it was Kay's doing. It was a warning shot. With me dead, he must have thought the Hayes family was an easy target. I called Liam immediately. Kay made his move. My voice was ice. "I know," Liam replied, his tone unervingly calm. "Don't worry. This is part of the plan." "What do you mean? If you don't back a predator into a corner, how will he ever show his true colors?" Liam's voice held the cool confidence of a master strategist. "Ethan, this is our chance. Right now, all of his attention is on the Hayes Corporation. This is the perfect time for you to get inside his stronghold and find the core evidence." It clicked. This was a setup, a trap Liam had laid to lure the snake out of its hole. He was willing to risk the entire Hayes Corporation as bait. This man was even more ruthless than I had thought. "Does Eleanor know about this?" I had to ask. The line went silent for a moment. "No," Liam said, his voice strained. "Some things are better for her not to know." I hung up, a swirl of emotions churning inside me. I didn't know if what Liam was doing was right, but I knew I had no other choice. That night, I infiltrated Kay's private penthouse club. It was his fortress, the nerve center for all his illegal operations. The security was said to be impenetrable, that not even a fly could get in. But I wasn't a fly. I used to be a regular here. I knew every secret passage, every blind spot in the surveillance system. I moved like a phantom, bypassing guards and cameras, and slipped into his top-floor office. The office was just as I remembered it, opulent, with the garish taste of new money. I had no time for sightseeing. What I needed was in the safe, hidden in an adjoining room. Inside was his original ledger, the one with all his dirtiest secrets. I stood before the safe and took a deep breath. A 6-digit code. I didn't know the combination, but I knew Kay. He was arrogant to a fault and deeply superstitious. The code would be related to his date of birth, or some number he considered lucky. I tried a few combinations I remembered him mentioning in the past. All failed. The alarm could be triggered at any second. Sweat beaded on my forehead. Just as I was about to give up and resort to brute force, a detail I had overlooked flashed through my mind. Kay's only son, the one who indirectly caused Chloe's death. His birthday. I quickly punched in the date. A soft click echoed in the silent room. The safe was open. Inside, there were no gold bars or stacks of cash as I'd expected. Just a single, black, encrypted hard drive. I immediately connected my portable decryptor and began copying the contents. Time ticked by, each second an eternity. My heart hammered against my ribs. Finally, after 10 agonizing minutes, all the files were successfully copied to my flash drive. I didn't waste a second, immediately backtracking the way I came. Just as I was about to leave the club, thinking I was home free, the unexpected happened. 2 drunk bodyguards were stumbling down the hallway, arm in arm, heading right for me. I was in a camera blind spot, but it was also a narrow corridor with nowhere to hide. I pressed myself flat against the wall, trying to disappear into the shadows. One of the guards fumbled for a lighter to light a cigarette. Click! The small flame illuminated the space in front of him, and it illuminated the pair of sneakers I was wearing, hidden in the dark. "Who's there?" The guard's drunkenness vanished instantly. Damn it! Without hesitation, I lunged forward. Before they could react, I drove my elbow like a blade into the side of one man's neck, striking his carotid artery. He went down without a sound. The other guard's eyes went wide with terror. He opened his mouth to shout. I closed the distance, clamping my left hand over his mouth while my right pressed the cold steel of my knife against his throat. The icy blade silenced the scream before it could begin. "Not a sound if you want to live," I hissed, my voice low and menacing. He trembled violently, nodding his head in frantic agreement. I used him as a shield, backing away toward the emergency exit. Once there, a single, heavy punch sent him crumpling to the floor, unconscious. The alarm finally went off, its shrill cry tearing through the club's quiet opulence. I didn't dare linger, sprinting for the exit with everything I had. Behind me, I could hear the chaos of shouting and running footsteps. Fortunately, I had already planned the perfect escape route. By the time I shook the last of my pursuers and made it back to the safe house, it was 3 a.m. I was drenched in cold sweat, my heart threatening to beat its way out of my chest. But clutched in my hand was the flash drive, the key to sending Kay to hell for good. I immediately encrypted the contents and sent them to Liam in secure, separate batches. Only after it was done did I finally let out a breath, collapsing into a chair in sheer exhaustion. I didn't leave the safe house for the next few days. I knew Kay would be losing his mind. He would never have imagined someone could steal his most damning secrets from right under his nose. He'd be hunting for me like a mad dog. All I had to do was wait. Wait for Liam's signal. Wait for the net to close. 3 days later, Liam called. "It's done," he said, his voice thick with suppressed excitement. All the evidence was delivered to a federal task force through a secure channel. They launched the operation this morning. They're rounding everyone up as we speak. What about Kay? He tried to make a run for it, but they caught him at the airport, Liam said, a note of triumph in his voice. "It's over, Ethan. We won. We won." Hearing those words, I felt surprisingly little elation. All I felt was tired. The string that had been pulled taut for so long finally snapped. "How's Eleanor?" I asked. "The crisis at the company is over. She's fine," Liam said. "Ethan, it's time for you to go see her." After hanging up, I didn't move. I stared at the stranger in the mirror. For my death, I had completely changed my appearance. I grown my hair out, sported a beard, and wore a pair of non-prescription glasses. I looked like a down-on-his-luck artist, a world away from the sharp, confident Ethan Vance of the past. Was this how I was going to face Eleanor? Tell her I wasn't dead, that I was back. And then what? Tell her our entire 3-year marriage was built on a foundation of filthy lies. Tell her that her own father had allowed her best friend's killer to walk free for his own gain. Tell her that I, her husband, had known and chosen to run away from it all with a fake death. How could I even begin to explain? What right did I have to reappear in her life? A wave of cowardice, stronger than any I'd ever known, washed over me. I was afraid of the shock in her eyes, afraid of the hatred, and most of all, afraid of her disappointment. Maybe letting her believe I was dead was the kindest thing I could do. Without me, without Kay, without all the dirty secrets of the past, she could start a new life. And I should just disappear like a real ghost. I pulled out the plane ticket to South America again. This time, it seemed I had no reason left to stay. But just as I was about to book the next flight out, my phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. The voice on the other end was one I never expected to hear. "Ethan, it's Ben Carter." Ben, my most trusted assistant before I died. The man who had orchestrated the entire accident. "Ben, don't ask how I found you." Ben's voice was frantic. "You have to get out of there. Go now as far as you can. It's Kay. He escaped." "What?" I shot up from my chair. "Escaped? How is that possible? He was in federal custody. It was Robert Hayes, Eleanor's father." Ben's voice was choked with fury. "I don't know how, but he pulled some strings, bribed someone, and got Kay out. They're on a private yacht right now. They've already headed out to sea." My mind went numb. Robert Hayes. Why would he rescue Kay? They were enemies. Where are they going? I demanded. "I don't know, but they took someone with them." Ben's voice trembled with fear. "Who?" "Eleanor. They took Miss Hayes with them." "You said what?" I felt all the blood in my body rush to my head. Robert Hayes and Kay had kidnapped Eleanor together? What the hell was going on? "It's true." Ben was almost sobbing. "My guys saw it with their own eyes. They forced her into the car." "Ethan, something is wrong." "Robert Hayes. I think he's gone insane." Insane? A man who could conceal the truth about his daughter's best friend's murder for years for the sake of profit. I wouldn't put anything past him. But even a monster doesn't devour its own young. Why would he turn on his own daughter? Unless Eleanor had something that he, or Kay, wanted more than anything. A horrifying thought struck me like a bolt of lightning. I lunged for my computer, pulling up all the confidential files of the Hayes Corporation at lightning speed. I scanned through mountains of data, frantically searching for any link between Robert Hayes and Kay. Finally, in a triple encrypted folder, I found a file named the Chimera Project. When I opened it and saw the contents, my blood turned to ice. It wasn't a business plan. It was a complete, procedural report for an organ transplant. The recipient, Kay. The donor, Eleanor Hayes. The organ. A heart. I understood. I understood everything. Kay never had a son. The so-called rich kid was just a cover, some orphan he'd adopted. Kay himself had a severe heart condition and was in desperate need of transplant. And he, just like me, had a rare blood type, Rh negative. His obsession with the Hayes family, the whole setup with the street race, it was never about a woman. His target, from the very beginning, was Eleanor, who shared his blood type. What he wanted was her healthy heart. And Robert Hayes, that inhuman monster. The reason he broke Kay out of custody, the reason he kidnapped his own daughter, was to finalize the deal, a demonic transaction to trade his daughter's life for the future prosperity of the Hayes family. Arg! I let out a primal roar and slammed my fist into the monitor. The screen shattered, and a sharp pain shot through my knuckles. Blood streamed down the back of my hand, but I couldn't feel a thing. In that instant, every shred of reason was incinerated by a tidal wave of pure rage. Robert Hayes. Kay, I'm going to kill you both. I immediately called Liam. Liam, Eleanor's been kidnapped by her father and Kay. They're going to take her heart. My voice was twisted with a fury so intense it was bordering on madness. What? Liam sounded just as shocked. Track Robert Hayes's private yacht. Now. I don't care what it takes. Do it. Okay, I'm on it. I hung up and moved without thinking. I ran to my room and dragged a heavy black case from under the bed. I threw open. Inside, nestled in foam, lay the disassembled parts of a Barrett M82A1 sniper rifle. The steel was cold, gleaming with a bloodthirsty light. It was the last thing I had kept from my old life. I had sworn I would never touch it again, but now I had no choice. With practiced speed, I assembled the weapon and checked the ammunition. Then, I looked at myself in the mirror. I ripped off the glasses, grabbed a knife, and hacked away at the long hair. I scrubbed my face raw with a towel, removing the last traces of my beard. In the mirror, the man who stared back was the one I thought I'd left behind. The old Ethan Vance, his eyes burning with hellfire. Eleanor, hold on. Not even God is going to take your heart from me. Liam was fast. In less than 30 minutes, he sent me the real-time location and heading of Robert Hayes' yacht. Their destination was international waters. Once they crossed that line, they would be beyond the reach of any law. And at their current speed, they would be out of territorial waters in less than 3 hours. I didn't have much time. I called Ben Carter. Ben, I need a helicopter and the best pilot you can find. Now, right now. A helicopter? What are you going to do? A rescue, I said, offering no further explanation. Ben didn't ask any more questions. He just said one word. Done. That was the trust between us. 30 minutes later, a black EC-135 private helicopter was waiting for me on the roof of the building. I slung the heavy sniper rifle over my back, grabbed a duffel bag filled with ammunition and a medical kit, and jumped aboard. Target, due east 125 nautical miles, I ordered the pilot. With a deafening roar of the rotors, the helicopter lifted off, a black hawk soaring out over the vast, churning ocean. The weather at sea was turning. What had been a clear sky was now a dark mass of churning clouds, the wind whipping the waves into a frenzy. The helicopter bucked and swayed in the turbulence, and my heart sank with every jolt. Eleanor, how are you? Are you scared? You have to hold on. Just hold on until I get there. An hour and a half later, the pilot's voice crackled in my headset. Boss, I got a visual. 7 o'clock, down below. I leaned out, my eyes scanning the tumultuous waves. There it was, a sleek white yacht, cutting through the swells, making a desperate run for the open sea. That's it. Get closer. Maintain an altitude of 300 feet. I ordered. Boss, the wind's too strong. It's too dangerous at that height. Follow the order. The pilot said no more and began to descend. I slid the cabin door open, clipped my harness to a safety line, and set up the Barrett. Through the 8 power scope, I locked onto the yacht's deck. 2 armed guards stood there, nervously scanning the horizon. Kay and Robert Hayes were nowhere in sight. They had to be in the cabin. With Eleanor. I couldn't wait any longer. I took a deep breath and centered the crosshairs on one of the guards' foreheads. The wind was howling. The waves were crashing. The helicopter was shaking violently. But my hands were steady as rock. Goodbye, Ethan Vance, the man who went straight. Hello, demon from the depths of hell. Flump. The heavy report of the rifle was swallowed by the wind and the roar of the rotors. 1,000 yards away, a red mist erupted from the guard's head on the yacht's deck. He collapsed without a sound. The second guard froze, stunned. Before he could even process what had happened, a second bullet tore through his heart. With the deck clear, I gave the pilot my next command. Get me directly over the yacht. I'm going down. Boss, That's insane, the pilot yelled into the headset. In this weather, rappelling from a bucking helicopter to a pitching yacht was a suicide mission. No more talk. I unclipped my harness, grabbed the rope, and watched the rhythm of the yacht rising and falling on the waves. I timed it perfectly and leaped. The wind roared in my ears, the feeling of freefall nearly suffocating me. I hit the wet, slippery deck with a bone-jarring impact, stumbling and nearly falling. I didn't hesitate, rolling behind a deck winch for cover. In that same instant, the cabin door burst open and several men with submachine guns sprayed the spot where I had landed with automatic fire. Bullets ricocheted off the deck, sending sparks flying. Hidden behind cover, I calmly swapped a rifle for my pistol. Then I popped out, aimed, and fired 3 rounds into the chest of the closest gunman. Every shot hit its mark. He crumpled to the deck. The sound of gunfire ignited a brutal, close-quarters battle on the open sea. They had numbers and superior firepower. I had a single pistol, but I was Ethan Vance. I was born in the crucible of firefights and violence. Using the terrain and my own hyper-fast reflexes, I moved across the deck like a phantom, engaging them in a deadly dance. Every dodge, every shot was executed with the cold precision of a killing machine. 5 minutes later, no one on the deck was left standing. The thick smell of blood mingled with the salt of the sea spray. I kicked open the cabin door and charged inside. The cabin was brightly lit. A makeshift operating table had been set up. A doctor in a white coat was preparing surgical instruments, his hands shaking with fear. Next to the table, Kay was lying weakly on a gurney, hooked up to a host of medical monitors. And Robert Hayes was holding a pistol to the temple of a woman tied to a chair. Eleanor. Her mouth was sealed with duct tape. Her hair was a mess, her face as white as a sheet. But her eyes were fixed on Robert Hayes, burning with a look not of fear, but of infinite disappointment and pure, undiluted hatred. The moment she saw me, she froze. Her beautiful eyes filled with disbelief. Then, Robert Hayes followed her gaze and turned. When he saw my face, my real face, the terror on his was more profound than if he'd seen a ghost. You're supposed to be dead. Sorry to disappoint you, I said, walking toward him, my own gun leveled squarely at his forehead. You dare touch my wife's heart? My voice was devoid of all emotion, cold as the grave. Don't come any closer. Robert stammered, backing away. One more step, and I'll kill her. He pressed the muzzle of the gun harder against Eleanor's temple. But Eleanor showed no fear. She just looked at me, silent tears streaming down her face. Those tears were like molten lava, scalding my soul. Put the gun down, Robert, I said, stopping. It's not too late to walk away from this. It's too late. It's all too late, he screamed, his sanity clearly unraveling. I invested everything with Mr. K. Once the surgery is a success, the Hayes family will control the largest medical conglomerate in Southeast Asia. I can't lose. I won't lose. So you'll trade your own daughter's life for your fortune? I stared at him, realizing the creature before me was no longer a man. He was a monster. She owes me. She owes the Hayes family. Robert shrieked. If it wasn't for her wanting revenge for that dead friend of hers, would I be in this position? Would I have had to bow down to Kay? We gave her life. It's time she paid it back. His words made Eleanor squeeze her eyes shut. 2 more tears traced paths down her pale cheeks. My heart sank with them into a dark abyss. Let her go, I said. My voice was calm now, but it was a calm more terrifying than any rage, the dead silence before a hurricane. In your dreams. Robert was on the verge of a complete breakdown. Ethan, I know you're fast, but are you faster than a bullet? You can try to find out, I said, and then slowly I lowered my pistol. It fell to the floor with a loud clatter. Robert froze. Eleanor's eyes flew open, and she looked at me in horror, shaking her head frantically. I said, let her go. I repeated, your target is me. It was always me. She has nothing to do with this. You let her go, and my life is yours. Ethan, Kay suddenly spoke from the gurney, his voice weak and raspy. Stop talking to him. Just kill him. Now. Robert hesitated, his eyes darting between me and Eleanor. I knew he was gambling, trying to gauge just how much she meant to me. And I was gambling, too. I was betting that somewhere in his black, corrupted heart, there was still a shred of humanity left for his daughter. We stood in a standoff, time seeming to stop. The only sounds were the waves crashing against the hull and Kay's ragged, labored breathing. Finally, Robert moved. The gun at Eleanor's temple slowly lowered. He had lost his bet. Or maybe I had won mine. But just as a wave of relief washed over me, just as I was about to move forward, everything changed. Kay, lying on the gurney, had somehow produced a tiny Derringer pistol from under his blanket. His target wasn't me, nor was it Robert Hayes. It was Eleanor. He knew if she died, his new heart was gone. He was a dead man either way, and he was going to take everyone down with him. Look out! I roared, launching myself toward Eleanor without a second thought. In that same instant, bang, bang, 2 gunshots exploded in the cabin, one right after the other. The first was Kay's. The second was mine. The moment he fired, I'd scooped my own gun from the floor and put a bullet right through his heart. Then, an agony like a white-hot sledgehammer slammed into my back. A searing pain shot through my entire body. I used the last of my strength to pull Eleanor into my arms, shielding her with my own body. I could smell the familiar, cool fragrance of her hair. It's okay. This time, I finally got to hold you. My vision blurred. As I slipped into darkness, the last thing I heard was Eleanor's heart-shattering scream. Ethan, I don't know how long I was unconscious. When I came to, the first thing I smelled was the faint, sterile scent of antiseptic. I slowly opened my eyes to a white ceiling. I wasn't dead. I wiggled my fingers and felt the 4 line in my hand. I turned my head and saw a tear-stained, exhausted face. It was Eleanor. She was asleep, slumped over in a chair by my bed. Her hand was clutching mine tightly. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching in her long eyelashes and casting a golden halo around her. She had lost so much weight. Looking at her, my heart filled with an indescribable ache and a profound tenderness. I tried to move the hand she was holding. She woke instantly. When she saw my eyes were open, she froze. Her own beautiful eyes were first filled with confusion, then disbelief, and finally, a tidal wave of overwhelming joy. You're awake. Her voice was hoarse and thick with emotion. I managed a weak smile. Yeah. The next second, she lost all control, collapsing against my chest and sobbing uncontrollably. Her cries were filled with terror, with pain, and with the precious relief of getting something back from the brink of oblivion. Her hot tears soaked through my hospital gown, scalding my heart. I tried to raise my arm to hold her, but a jolt of pain from the wound in my back made me gasp. Don't move. She sat up immediately, wiping her tears as she anxiously checked my bandages, treating me like I was made of fragile porcelain. The doctor said, the bullet was less than half an inch from your heart. Any closer, and I would have never seen you again. She started crying again as she spoke. I lifted my hand and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. Silly girl, my voice was dry from disuse. I promised my wife I'd spend a lifetime watching her wear the most beautiful dresses. I wouldn't dare die and break that promise. She stared at me, stunned. Then, a deep blush spread across her face, coloring her cheeks, and even the tips of her ears a lovely shade of pink. I realized it was the first time I had ever seen her blush. So, the iceberg could melt after all. Later, I learned what had happened on the yacht. Kay had died instantly, and Robert Hayes, after witnessing it all, had completely lost his mind. When the Coast Guard arrived, he was still muttering about the Chimera project. He would spend the rest of his life in a psychiatric hospital. As for me, I had been in a coma for a week due to blood loss. And for that entire week, Eleanor had never left my side. On the day I was discharged, Liam came to pick us up. He saw our hands clasped tightly together, and a genuine smile spread across his face. He said to me, Ethan, thank you, and congratulations. I said, I'm the one who should be thanking you. I pulled him aside and asked quietly, when is the anniversary of your sister's death? Liam paused for a moment before telling me the date. I nodded, committing it to memory. I owed that girl a long overdue apology. We returned to our villa in the Highlands. Everything was the same as before. But this time, my heart wasn't filled with the urge to escape, but with the profound, grounding feeling of being home. That evening, after I showered and went to the bedroom, I found Eleanor standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows. She was wearing something I had never seen before, a black lace negligee. She looked a little uncomfortable, the moonlight tracing the exquisite curves of her body. She was breathtaking. When she saw me, she blushed again. You always liked to see me in these, didn't you? She asked, looking down, her voice as soft as a whisper. I walked up behind her and gently wrapped my arms around her waist. I buried my face in the crook of her neck, inhaling the scent of her that had become my peace. Yes, I whispered, kissing her earlobe, my voice growing husky. Always, for my whole life. Outside, the moon was like liquid silver. But in my world, the iceberg had melted. It was finally spring.